Hello everyone! So you may have seen in the new Ryza event that we have this EX challenge here. This isn't really going to be a guide for the EX challenge as much as it is me showing off a little bit. That's fine every once in a while, right? You can use the strategies I'm using here if you do want to do these battles, but I don't recommend them, and you'll see why when I sort of show off what I did. But basically, you might know if you saw my polls the other day in my last video, I did not get Master Ryza. I also do not have Liddy. So I don't have these two like very powerful characters that, you know, sort of make this battle much easier. And this EX challenge is brutally difficult. It was actually the first EX challenge. I know that we had EX in the Liddy and Sue event, during the last event, but those were actually normal score battles that they rebalanced and turned, well, they didn't change them at all, they just turned them into EX. So on the JP server, those were 11 and 12, 111 and 112 for that event. And because they were so hard, they turned them into EX for global so that people wouldn't complain. And then this is even harder because these are real EX battles, and these have a recommended power of 15,000. As you can see, I only got an A on EX1. But these EX battles are really, really difficult without the new Ryza. And I'll just sort of go through and show why that is. But basically just the gist of it is that these enemies are really rigged. Like, this entire thing is really rigged for Ryza to be strong here, right? So basically she has a really powerful AoE slash break that increases the damage everything takes when it breaks, and it lowers their slash resistance. So like, you look at these enemies, right? And their resistance is minus 25 slash, minus 25 stab, 25 strike, and then 50 everything else. And so Ryza is the only area breaker we have in slash or stab, right? So you can only target the weakness realistically with her. And so other breakers just aren't really going to get the job done like other area breakers. And if you don't have area break for these enemies, they're going to quickly do a ton of damage to you and overwhelm you. And I will just show that off here. This is also a good timeline, so I should just go ahead and actually try the fight, but I'll probably lose. But basically the gist of it is, if you don't have Ryza, what you need to do is basically we're relying on Corneria's burst. So when I get to her turn, her burst is AoE. It does a very high amount of area stun damage. And this fight kind of has a gimmick where when you hit the boss while it's on full stun, we can probably see it in the battle info even. Yeah, creates a burst panel when hit by an attack while the stun gauge is full. And what this means is it's not random. It will turn all of the blue panels currently on the timeline into burst panels. So what we're doing here with Corneria is we're resetting the battle until we find a blue panel on top of her, right? And then we go and hit the boss. And see how those blue panels turn into burst? That's exactly what we want. So it takes a lot of resets usually to sort of get a timeline that even works out. Because it is so difficult, like, it just takes forever because you need this burst. If you don't stun everything, because there's 5 enemies here, if you don't stun everything, they will just very quickly overwhelm you with their absurd damage. We're just going to use Ampel to buff up Logi here. Ampel's really good because he increases Fizz attack. We wouldn't really have enough damage without him. But you can see the damage coming in already. If we didn't take care of these enemies, we would just die very, very quickly. So, Corneria Burst can break them all. One thing though, like, even though you can do this burst with Corneria, Ryza is still obviously much better because you can't really afford a second breaker in here. And this boss is very hard to break, as a stun gauge of 1000. So it's just another thing that makes Ryza even better in this scenario, because her burst has force break. So basically, you don't worry about the boss having a really large stun gauge, you just force break it with Ryza's burst, everything's cool. With this setup, basically, if I don't kill it before it comes out of break once, it will just, I'll never be able to break it again, right? I'll never be able to stun it again. It will just kill my team. So it's, yeah, it's just all a very bad time. I'm using Sophie here to sort of, you know, just help out a little bit with the resistance on the boss so Corneria can do more stun damage. And then we also have Valeria here helping out with damage. She will be our main burst damage for the boss because the boss is very tanky with 700,000 HP. And I think this goes up to like 850,000 on EX3, so it does get quite a bit more difficult, quite a bit tankier. But yeah, for now, we're just going to go ahead and use Valeria's skill 2 here. And Logi is kind of the one unit that's kind of actually required for this. You really, really need Logi for area burst damage. Logi is slash, he does area burst damage, and we're going to use items here on Logi. And the way I have this set up with Logi is that... Sorry, the way I have this set up with my items is that I use items here with Logi, so Logi gets more burst damage. And the items also apply to Valeria, of course. The Draken Elixir went on Valeria. And the way I have this set up is that Valeria will be able to double stack items on her second turn. So hopefully that'll be enough to burst the boss down if we get the correct burst panel timing. So we're just going to go here with Logi, and his burst very easily clears everything. On the higher EXs, another advantage of Ryza is that Logi doesn't easily clear all this stuff. So Ryza increasing all the damage they all take and lowering their slash resistance makes them take like 70% more damage, and it's just easy to clear them all with Logi. But on the higher EXs, it's not quite as easy. Like, they can survive all of these trash mobs though. Just a lot of different ways in which Ryza just makes this so much easier, right? Meanwhile, with a different team like this one, without her, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. So we're just gonna go in, do his cool burst thing, and nice, clean 550,000 damage. So very cool. And we're just gonna keep buffing up Valeria now, because Valeria is sort of who we're going to be using for our burst damage. Hopefully we can get a burst on her. We'll see. Yes, it looks like we can. Perfect. So because of the resistance debuffs from Corneria's burst, and then also from Sophie's skill 2, those are still up, we are able to do a good amount of stun damage. Without these resistance debuffs, we would not really be able to stun the boss. So very important here that we do have these things. And we just need to do a little bit of timeline manipulation here. We're going to have Sophie use her skill 1 so that Valeria can get here for the burst on that next turn. And now it's just going through and hoping we have enough damage. Not really much else to say about that. I did say before that we will be double stacking items on Valeria, so you can see here that she still has item buffs up. She has Miracle Ebonyals and the Draken Elixir as well for her burst. I think Logi's skill 1 is better here. Alright. And we'll also be boosting Valeria's physical attack. So she's going to get a ton of physical attack from Ampel. See, her physical attack's already at 1800. Very, very good. And after Corneria stuns the boss here, we will have our items back up already. This wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the item charge Memoria on Sophie. So you can see here, Memoria. This is a rare Memoria, so you probably have it at rank 5, restores 5% of item gauge at the start of the turn. Very, very strong Memoria if you need it for certain situations. And yeah, this allows us to double stack our items on Valeria so that she can get a really big burst off. Now, this boss does have so much HP that we're basically still relying on a crit here. Yeah, we're still relying on a crit. So if this doesn't crit, we probably lose, even with this perfect timeline. right? But we did get the crit. Very cool. 474,000. And the rest of it is just hopefully having enough damage here. Come on. Yeah, so Logi needs to crit here, which won't happen. Actually, I wasn't sure if his skill 2 was better than the burst. It might have been. No, I think it takes more damage from burst skills. Yeah, received increased damage and hit by a burst skill, so you do want to be using burst skills. Unfortunately, you know, we didn't get enough crits, we didn't get enough good RNG on the boss, so even though the timeline worked out really well, we're still probably going to basically die, because it has a blue panel here, and it's just going to kill us. Right? So, that's kind of how brutal this fight is. The margins are really thin. Even if you get a good, like, 1 in 100 timeline, like that one was, trust me, it's very rare, you can still just lose. Because you don't have enough damage either through crits or just other things. Very, very difficult to get everything to go right, completely right in a single battle. Usually you would want more bursts on Valeria. That wasn't quite enough. I was hoping I would get the SS there, but we didn't. And yeah, that's about how it goes. I will also show my actual clears. I do have some VODs for my Twitch channel, but before that, let's do some pulls. Oh, and also let me show my gear as well, before I get too distracted, just so you can see what I'm kind of working with here, because I really did pull out all of the stops to sort of clear these without Ryza. I went really hard on gear, used all of my best stuff. So, you know, we have skill 9, Hero Sword, skill 10, skill 9 here on Valeria, with good SSR Memoria at rank 1, Sacred Orbs on everyone. Ampel's gear basically sucks, because there's not really much I can do to make his gear better. At one point I tried building stun damage Ampel, because the margins were so tight, but that ended up not really being worth it. There was no way to really use his skill 1 to good effect, so I just used skill 2 with him. It's fine. Really, it's just getting this golden mail buff, and I don't have enough enhanced damage buff gear because I don't have Liddy, so I never made it. But, you know, the extra, like, 3% damage or whatever from the golden mail buff is something, right? There's not really anything else I can do for Ampel's itemization. And then he also has a speed Memoria, I believe, as well, yeah. Which I actually upgraded the supporter damage Memoria here. It's level 2 because I just needed like slightly more damage, right? It was so tight. And then we have Sophie here, and Sophie's gear is, it doesn't really matter for this. I just gave her some recovery stuff, some resistance, like it doesn't matter. Sophie's not contributing much outside of her resistance debuff, so a little bit of healing on her is probably kind of the best thing, but you're trying to win the fight before too much damage comes in. And then Corneria's gear, this is where my gear is really sad, because for Corneria we have Fizz Stun 5 on a Steel Bow, Fizz Stun 7 on a Hard Coat, and Fizz Stun 8 on a Serenity Scarf. I actually ran out of materials for the Serenity Scarf. I'm completely out now. I have like 10 of these at 9+, but none of them hit double stun damage, so very unlucky. If I had better breaker gear, that would help a lot with a lot of the break points. While I was trying that fight, especially before I added Sophie, I was originally doing it with Meru because I thought I needed to heal off the damage. There were times where I would, you know, get to the end of the fight and I would try and stun the boss and it would have like 8 stun left or something, because my gear just wasn't good enough. So, but once I added Sophie, that started being much less of an issue. And then, oh right, and also her Memoria is pretty sad. We have to use the rare Memoria that gives like 10% stun because it's not weak, but also we need to keep her magic attack low so that the Draken Elixir can target Valeria. And then we also have Logi. Logi's gear is pretty good. just 9s on everything. The hero sword has slash damage boost instead of skill power. This is just a better balance of damage and skill power because they're separate multipliers, but we're not getting a ton of skill damage on Logi, so 1 slash damage boost here does help balance that out a little bit and does end up being a bit more damage. And of course we just have a solid SSR Fist Attack Memoria on him. So yeah, Logi's gear also pretty good, but it's not the best. Like, I'm not having 10s on everyone, right? If I did have that gear, it would help. One other thing about like having Ryza is because she gives so much damage to Logi, you can actually use 3 Draken Elixirs, and that basically gives Valeria an extra 100% skill damage with this strat for her burst, right? But I need to use Miracle Ebonyals that target all attackers because otherwise Logi will not have enough damage to take out the ads. So we do need to use these items. If you have Ryza or if you have Liddy, like, they do help with that damage, so you can get even more damage on Val through Ebonyals. And as I said, this isn't really a guide. If you do have these units, you can try this, but I don't really recommend doing this without Ryza at all. Like, I did this for my own content, my own flexing. Whoops, that's a spoiler. But yeah, if you don't have Ryza, it's really not worth it. It took me hours and hours of resetting. But let's do polls real quick, and then I'll just go show my actual fights. Because everyone likes seeing polls, right? So I may as well just shove them into every video. We have 1 free wish for daily. 1 wink. Probably nothing. Alright, we'll just skip that then. I do have 110 medals now because I used all my gems, so maybe this month I will be able to spark Liddy. I probably will spark Liddy over anyone else. I think she's the most worth it, but it's a pretty personal choice. 1 wink again for our 10 pull. Probably fairly bad. But we'll see. Yeah, there's no one running around here. We do have Keith and Yudi. Alright. Just get through this. Yeah, just SRs, so nothing great, but that is fine. Alright, and I think I should just close out of the game now, and we can watch these videos. So when I was doing this on my Twitch stream, I basically, at one point, you can see down here in the bottom right, I set a timer for my resets. So we could sort of see how long it took me to clear this. This is kind of once I got a good team going. You can see I have Meru here instead of Sophie, but we are sort of going for the same strategy where we're looking for the right bursts on the right characters to get as much damage and stun out as possible. And yeah, this is EX1, by the way. And I kind of just, you can see the timer going up and we're just still resetting the same battle. And it wasn't until, let's see, around here, a little bit further. No, it was right here. Yeah, so this attempt is around where I finally beat it. So we got a good timeline, you know, everything's stunned. I'm just sort of figuring out like what order to use all my skills in, right? And you can see we have an early burst on Valeria here, followed by another burst on Valeria. And this is really what you're going for the end. And that's why I didn't have enough damage in the attempt I just showed you, is because we didn't have this double burst setup on Valeria. If you don't get multiple bursts on Valeria, you probably won't have enough damage. So even though I had 1 burst that crit for a lot, we only had 1 burst, right? So it's pretty rough. So yeah. Lots of thinking because I don't want to screw it up. We're kind of sitting around at characters a lot. Probably also talking. And yeah, so this is what I was really sad about here. Logi just got 1 shot. And this is the reason why this run was an A. The fairy just killed Logi. I was a little upset about it. And I think what happened there is Logi was the only one on low HP, right? At some point? Yeah, I believe the beetle on the next turn targeted him. So he's at low HP, and I guess Ampa was too. So if it hit any other character, Logi wouldn't have died, right? But it didn't hit Logi. So that was pretty unfortunate. Yeah. Boom. Items. Honestly, pain. And we just go through here. Where's the Valeria Burst? So right here. It did not crit. We'll see. Which is pretty surprising, but I did have items for the next one. So see, we got another one even after that. So this will be Valeria's third burst. Right. All right. Let me just count my crit chance real quick. It's really not that bad, right? Yeah, I have like 30% crit chance, so 30% chance this crits, and it does. And it's just enough, it's just barely enough damage to kill it. Then we just have to take care of the fairy, which is very easy. Because the fairy was still alive in this one, I also ended up losing points to turns, so... we lost points to turn count as well. Yeah. So 33 turns, 1 KO, so we only got an A. If Logi didn't die, this definitely would have been an SS. But yeah, as you can see, it took me about 3 hours of resetting with this team just to get one run that won. And that was my first day of this. I never ended up going back to this, of course, because I didn't feel like it was worth it to do EX1 when I could just try EX2, right? So I do have that VOD here as well. Next day I started EX2, and I did start the timer from 0. So on this video, we will have it from 3.5 hours, but I did start it from 0. So this is basically like 3.5 hours in to resetting, you know, this battle. And I was so out of it and so desperate that I was actually using SD at one point, because I kind of realized that, oh, I don't actually need to heal off the damage. I just need to kill them fast enough that they don't kill me, right? I was just basically just like, Meru's not contributing enough. I can't sustain anyways. If it goes too long, I just lose. So I tried SD, but SD wasn't really good enough. She didn't do enough damage. She didn't really solve any problems compared to Meru. And it wasn't until like probably around, like I went back to Meru at some point even, you can see, and I think it was around like 4.5 hours in where I finally switched to Sophie. I was like, okay, screw it. We're using another limited character. I don't care. She's going to help a lot. She'll mitigate targeting RNG. She'll make breaking easier. She'll give me more damage. Like, I just ended up using Sophie. I do generally, when I'm doing things, like to keep limited characters to a minimum, but sometimes you just have no choice, right? So I brought in Sophie, and this was the correct decision. But it still wasn't going well. We're still 4.5 hours in, and I got to around this point, and I'm basically just like, okay, we're almost 6 hours in. I am going to stop at 6 hours. Like, I have been sitting here for 6 hours resetting this for content, and it's just not worth it at some point, right? Like, it is straight up not worth it. You only get mana. These are completely optional battles. Like, what is the point, right? Why am I doing this to myself? I mean, it's fun, you know, hanging out, talking to chat, everything. Like, if I was doing this not on a Twitch stream just by myself, I would have given up, like, ages ago, right? Or if the memory leak bug was still in the game, they actually fixed the memory leak this patch, by the way, thank God. For those of you who don't know, when you reset battles for a long time, or even just play the game for a long time, eventually it starts memory leaking and the game starts stuttering, the music starts stuttering, loading gets really slow, everything just feels really bad to play, and you basically had to reset the game after like an hour and a half, just restart the game. They did fix that this patch, so I could go 6 whole hours without having to restart the game. If the memory leak was still in, I probably would have gotten fed up with it much sooner. But yeah, we're basically 6 hours in at this point. I want to get up, I want to go eat, I just want to be done. But I'm also kind of motivated because I'm feeling kind of close. Like, I know it's possible, right? I know it's possible, so I'm motivated to do it. And that's just kind of where I'm at. But it's really, really, really hard. So yeah, eventually the timer gets around to 6 hours, and I'm on my last attempt. And I have a good timeline, right? We're just trying our last attempt. So Corneria gets this done. I do have to set up the timeline a bit weirdly because the burst is all the way back here, but we can get burst on Logi. So, you know, skill 1 with Sophie, Logi goes here. items get the burst on him. That's perfectly fine. Everything dies, right? So we're on our last attempt. I'm going to stop the timer when it gets to 6 hours. Like, I am done, right? So yeah, items go out.
Fairy die. What do you think? That would not be great.
And right here, what was I worried about? I'm worried about something. I'm basically worried that the boss is going to have a blue panel. If the fairy dies, I believe it does. But luckily the fairy lives with like barely any health.
I mean, if we were gonna get a run, this is the one.
So yeah, we have the burst on Val.
Val does not get the burst.
But we can't get this one on her. So it's just like,
actually tragic.
That's not fortunate. There is absolutely no way to get this burst on Val. And yeah, you can see I stopped the timer. Like I'm just completely done. But we're gonna finish out this attempt, right? Just see how it goes. It looks pretty hopeless right now because I'm not getting this burst on Val, but maybe there's a chance, right? Like maybe. So we can just go ahead and skip through this a little bit. We do get a crit here, which really helps. Yeah, I'm just thinking what to do. We killed the fairy because otherwise it would do a burst and that wouldn't be good. And we do stun it, and as you can see, we do have this other burst on Val, but unfortunately with this one we don't have double stacked items, right? Our items have fallen off, so now we only have 1 stack of items for this burst.
I don't think it's enough damage.
So it's probably not enough damage, right?
This way.
I'm pretty convinced it's not enough damage.
Don't think it's anywhere near enough damage.
So we set up the items, go for the crit, hopefully get the crit, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And like, it's pretty close, right? Okay, so she got the crit. Big crit coming. But it's still alive. And it's gonna start attacking us, it's gonna burst. There's just absolutely nothing that can be done. Like, at all. See, just death. Logi doesn't do enough damage. At all, right? So. And GG. Goodbye.
Like, it can totally be done.
You can hear me there. I'm just like, I want to do it so bad.
I just missed the burst on Val there, but like...
I want to do it so bad. And so I'm just like, okay, we're restarting the timer. One more attempt. So I start the timer. And...
Oh, no, like one more actual attempt.
Yeah, right? Just one more attempt. Not coping or anything. So we get here, and after just 1 minute, we get a good timeline. Corneria has her burst. Lots of bursts down here.
If this one doesn't work, we're done.
When I was resetting this, there were times where I wouldn't see a burst on Corneria for like 10, 15 minutes at a time, let alone a viable timeline with the correct burst down here and no red panels. So getting this in a minute, very, very nice. So, you know, we go through all the stuff. You already know how it works out. You know, everything gets stunned. Sophie does her thing. We actually have an early burst on Val here. So I will be bursting the boss, I believe. Just for a little bit of extra damage, because we really need that extra damage, right?
And that's no fun.
And this burst has
No fun at all.
no items, so its damage isn't great. The boss isn't stunned, but it's still extra damage. And Logi comes in with the items.
If the fairy dies, it doesn't, I guess.
Does his thing. Perfect. And you can see the pixie actually died this time, but it's totally fine. We have a burst on Val here. And you can see down here we have another burst on Val. The timeline just perfectly lined up. And I knew this was possible to get this many bursts in a row on Val in this battle. And this is basically the, like, you know, 1 in 1,000 timeline that you're aiming for when doing this. So everything's lined up. The boss has a red panel on its area attack, so it's not going to do much damage. It's not going to kill anyone or even get close. Sophie gives the resistance down for Val. All we have to do is go through now and do damage. So we didn't get a crit on this burst, which will be very important, crit chance is like 30%. The crit would do, you know, a significant amount of extra damage, another like 65,000 damage or whatever. But unfortunately we didn't get a crit there. But that is not the important burst to get the crit on, because that's not the one where we have all of our buffs stacked up. We only have half of our buffs there. So we go here.
Wait.
Corny kicks. And then Sophie debuffs. And we have the biggest possible burst with Valeria here, right? Blue panel, Sophie debuff, 2 Ompo buffs, double stack items, everything. It just needs to crit. And we get it.
Okay, if the first one had crit, it would just be dead right now.
500,000 damage, and the boss is almost there, but not quite dead. And you can see that Lodi doesn't do enough damage here, but thankfully, his skill 1 actually puts him in the right spot in the timeline to get that burst. So, skill 1 with Lodi, buff him with Ompel, and then it's enough damage. After 6 hours of resetting this awful battle, and it's just like 6 hours is a long time. Anyways, we cleared it, and it was an SS. I was so happy about this SS. Like, we actually got the SS too. I was so happy about this SS. Like, I cannot explain, because I really didn't, like, I knew it was clearable. I wasn't sure I would be able to SS. And the SS is really hard. Like, really, really hard. So, yeah. Very cool. Very difficult without Ryza, but definitely doable if you want to put in the effort, if you have the other right characters, if you have the gear. It still is very hard. This is some of the hardest content we have so far. It rivals like later Affinity Tower stages if you don't have the right characters. If you do have the right characters, it gets a lot easier though. Like if you do have Ryza, it's basically made to show off how strong Ryza is, right? There's no way around it. That's kind of how event limited stuff goes, but still doable without her, which is pretty cool. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this video was fun. It's not my normal style of content where I like do guides and stuff and explain how to do everything. I mean, I guess I kind of did that anyways, but no one can follow this guide. I mean, very few people should follow this guide if you even can. Just don't bother with this if you don't have Ryza, in my opinion. There are other setups that can do it too without Ryza. I don't know them, just personally. I know that EX1 is doable without Ompel because I did it on JP however many months ago, but you know, it is what it is. This is the setup I had access to, so that's what I showed here. And I will be doing some amount of EX3 attempts today on my Twitch channel, which I will link in the description. We'll see if it's possible. I don't know if it is because I was already super tight on damage for this one. If I had better gear, like 10s on Val for everything, it would definitely be possible. But the damage is already super tight here. I would need like a perfect timeline with multiple crits. It's just like, it doesn't sound that realistic for EX3, but I will be doing at least a couple hours of attempts today on Twitch. And I also have the full stream VODs for these attempts. They will be on my VODs channel within the coming days, and I will also link that in the description. So if you're interested in watching either of those things, you know, just check them out. I love chatting with people on Twitch if you want to just ask any questions or just say hi. I stream Resleriana somewhat regularly, not always, but somewhat regularly, plus other games. And yeah, that'll be about it. Thanks for watching. I hope this was enjoyable, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.